The church smelled like old wood and decaying lilies, a useless scent, trying to mask the overwhelming nothingness that had swallowed my world. I sat in the front pew, my black dress itchy and too big that a last-minute purchase from a discount rack. Because a 16-year-old doesn't own a funeral outfit, my fingers were locked around the slim, silver chain at my throat. My mother's. The clasp was cold against my skin, the only real sensation I could feel. A hand settled on my shoulder. I flinched. The car's here. Tessa. It was Liam, my brother, 20 years old, in a suit that looked expensive and new. His eyes were red-rimmed, but dry. His jaw set in a tight line that spoke of inconvenience, more than grief. He'd shown up 30 minutes ago, just in time for the generic eulogy the pastor had cobbled together from the 5 facts we'd provided. Beloved parents, tragic accident, survived by their children. He hadn't said a word about them, not one memory. I looked up at him, hoping for something. A crack, a tear, a sign that the big brother who used to let me ride on his back was still in there. Are we going to the graveside? My voice was a hoarse whisper. His phone buzzed in his pocket, a violent, insistent sound. He pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and his expression shifted at a flicker of what looked like relief. I can't. Tess, I've got to get back. The investor meeting, it's moved up. This startup thing, it's a 24/7 grind. You have no idea. The investor meeting. I repeated, the words tasting like ash. Our parents were being buried in an hour. Sienna will handle everything here, he said, as if delegating a task. He gave my shoulder an awkward pat, the gesture empty. She's good at that stuff. Just listen to her. Okay, I'll call soon. And then he was gone. I watched through the stained glass window as he hurried to his leased convertible, never looking back at the small church that held what was left of his family. The engine roared to life, an obscene sound in the cemetery quiet, and then he was just a speck on the sun-bleached highway, heading back to San Francisco, back to his grind. Sienna appeared silently beside me. She wasn't much older than Liam, 22, but in that moment, she seemed ancient. Her own simple black dress was neat, her brown hair pulled into a severe knot. Her face was pale, wiped clean of expression, but her eyes held a weary steadiness that kept me from completely dissolving. Come on, Tessa, she said, her voice low but firm. We have to go to the next part. There was no we with Liam anymore. It was just Sienna and me. The silence in our house after the funeral was a living thing. It wasn't peaceful, it was heavy, suffocating. The mail piled up the bills with final notice stamped in angry red. The fridge held a casserole from a neighbor and a half-gallon of expired milk. Liam's monthly calls were a study in detachment. The conversations, if you could call them that, were always the same. My phone would ring, not Liam's number, but Sienna's. I'd pick up, hoping, hey, kiddo. His voice, tinny and distant, would come through. Put Sienna on? I'd hand the phone over, a lump in my throat. Sienna would take it, walking into the kitchen. I'd strain to hear, yes, no, we're managing. The insurance is still being processed. I know. Liam, yes. You take care, too. She never cried, never raised her voice. She'd just stand there, listening to whatever excuses he was making 300 miles away. Her free hand often braced against the countertop as if holding the world up. When she hung up, she'd stand for a long minute, staring at the pile of bills, before turning back to whatever she was doing, making dinner from canned soup, balancing the checkbook for the 3rd time. School became a different kind of battlefield. The poor orphan aura clung to me like the smell of that church. My clothes were outdated, my backpack fraying. I couldn't afford the senior class trip, the yearbook ad, the prom ticket. I became invisible until someone needed a target. It was career day, a farce for someone whose only career path looked like surviving until graduation. I'd been lingering by my locker, trying to muster the courage to ask Mr. Henderson about work-study forms. When Brittany Chase and her coven descended, Brittany was all glossy lips and designer jeans, the queen of our mediocre high school kingdom. Her father was a lawyer. Mine were dead. The math, to her, was simple. Look, it's Tess the mess. She sing-songed, leaning against the locker next to mine. Working on your career plan. Let me guess, professional mourner? Or maybe a charity case. Her friends tittered. Heat flooded my face. Leave me alone. Brittany. Oh, touchy, she said, her eyes glinting with malicious delight. I'm just being practical. You know, my dad says people need to plan. But I guess it's hard to plan when you're waiting for the next handout. Need me to start a GoFundMe for you? Send Tessa to wherever it is poor people go after this. The words were like physical blows. The lump from Liam's calls was back, choking me. I looked down at my scuffed shoes, wishing the floor would swallow me. Tears, hot and humiliating, welled up. I couldn't stop them. A voice, calm and icy, cut through the hallway chatter. Is there a problem here? Sienna stood there. She must have come straight from her shift at the diner. She still had her apron on. A faint smell of coffee and grease clinging to her. She wasn't tall, but she stood very straight, her eyes fixed on Brittany. Brittany recovered first, sneering. We're just having a conversation about career prospects. I heard your conversation, Sienna said, her tone never wavering. It was the same voice she used on the phone with debt collectors. It sounded less like a conversation about prospects and more like a demonstration of profound insecurity and a stunning lack of class. Brittany blinked. Excuse me? Poverty isn't a lack of money. Brittany, Sienna continued, stepping closer. I'd never seen her like this. She was usually so quiet, so folded in on herself. Real poverty is a lack of character, empathy, and basic human decency. Your comments just now, they didn't define Tessa. They defined you. Perfectly. The hallway had gone silent. Brittany's face flushed an ugly red. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Come on, Tessa, Sienna said, turning to me. She didn't put an arm around me. She just looked at me, and in that look was a command. Stand up. I wiped my face, grabbed my backpack, and followed her out, leaving a stunned Brittany and her silent friends behind. The car was an old Honda, the interior warmed by the afternoon sun. We drove for a few minutes in silence. My cheeks still burned. I'm sorry, I mumbled, staring out the window. I shouldn't have let her. Stop, Sienna interrupted, her hands tight on the wheel. Don't you apologize. Not for 1 second. She took a breath. Listen to me. People like that, they're small. Their world is small. They kick down because they're afraid of looking up and seeing how far they have to climb. Don't give them your tears. Tessa, they're not worth it. It was the most she'd said to me in weeks. It wasn't soft. It wasn't coddling. It was a stark, simple truth. And it felt more solid than any hug. But truth didn't pay bills. A few weeks later, I got my report card, all as a valedictorian track. I stared at it on the kitchen table, the letters swimming. It felt like a cruel joke. What was the point? College was a fantasy. The stack of bills Sienna poured over every night was the reality. I found her at the sink, washing the last of our cheap plates. We'd already broken 2 this month. I took a deep breath. Sienna, I'm going to quit school. Mr. Henderson says he can get me a full-time job at the gas station on Route 9. The night shift pays more. The plate slipped from her hands. It hit the linoleum floor with a sharp, final crack, shattering into a dozen pieces. The last of the set. She didn't even look at it. She turned to me, water dripping from her fingers, her face bone white. What did you just say? I'm going to quit. I repeated, forcing the words out. I'm not a kid anymore. I see you. 2 jobs. The diner and the bookstore. You come home so tired you fall asleep on the couch. You're using your tip money to buy my textbooks. It's not fair. I can help. I need to help. For a long moment, she just stared at me. Then, a tremor went through her. No, the word was quiet, absolute. Sienna, be reasonable. No, this time it was a whip crack. You listen to me. Tessa Williams. Over my dead body. Do you understand me? Your brain. Your grades. That is the one thing they didn't take. That is the one thing he did. She never said Liam's name with anything but that hollow tone. Didn't bother to stick around and ruin. It is the only thing of value we have left in this godforsaken situation. She stepped over the broken china, gripping the edge of the table, leaning towards me. You want to help me? Is that what you want? Her eyes were blazing, a fire I didn't know she possessed. Then you take that brilliant mind of yours, and you get the hell out of this town. You get a full ride to the best college that will have you. You work harder than anyone ever has, and you make something of yourself. You make so much of yourself that you never, ever have to depend on a man who runs away when it gets hard, or worry about breaking the last plate. You want to help me? You succeed. You thrive. You live the life they wanted for you. That is how you help me. Not by pumping gas on Route 9. I was crying again, but silently this time. Not from shame, but from a terrible, dawning understanding. The weight of her sacrifice, the sheer scale of it, settled on my shoulders, heavier than any grief. That night, I lay in bed, hollowed out. I heard the soft pad of her feet, the creak of the floorboard outside my door. She paused. I held my breath, pretending to be asleep. She didn't come in. The footsteps moved away, down the hall to the kitchen. Curiosity, or maybe guilt, pulled me up. I crept to my doorway. The kitchen light was on, a dim, yellow pool on the linoleum. Sienna sat at the table, her back to me, the calculator in one hand, a stack of papers in front of her. Her shoulders, usually so straight, were slumped. In the silence, I heard the soft, relentless tap-tap-tap of the calculator buttons, a desperate, rhythmic Morse code. We can't. We can't. We can't. I backed into my room, my heart hammering against my ribs. I didn't turn on the light. I fumbled in my desk drawer, my fingers finding the glossy brochure I'd secretly sent for. Weeks ago, Stanford, palm trees, sandstone arches, a future written in sunlight, a fantasy. I sat on the edge of my bed, the brochure trembling in my hands. Sienna's words echoed. You get the hell out of this town. The tap-tap-tap from the kitchen was a metronome, measuring our despair. No. I stood up, found a thumbtack on my desk. In the dark, I walked to the wall above my bed. I pressed the tack through the brochure, right through the smiling face of a student on the cover, and into the drywall. Thump. It wasn't a dream anymore. It was a target, a promise, a rebellion. The tapping from the kitchen stopped for a second, then resumed, slower. I got back into bed, staring at the dark shape on my wall. The hell out of this town had a name now. It had a price, and I, Tessa Williams, was going to pay it for her, for me, for the silence in this house that I was going to fill with something that wasn't grief. The target on my wall became my religion. Stanford. It wasn't just a university. It was the physical manifestation of Sienna's command to get out. Every hour I spent at school, at my new job at the 24-hour mini-mart, or hunched over textbooks at the kitchen table past midnight, was an hour invested in that escape. Sienna worked longer hours. She'd taken on freelance bookkeeping for 2 local businesses on top of her diner shifts. Our paths crossed in the bleary-eyed dawn or the silent late night. We developed a shorthand, a code, transmitted via sticky notes on the fridge or terse texts. Running late. Code cement, that meant a tough day, a difficult customer, a looming bill. It meant, be strong, don't crumble. I'd reply, heard, picking up milk. Code rose, a small victory, an extra shift tip. A good grade on a pop quiz, a a tiny bloom in the cracks. One Tuesday, or maybe it was a Wednesday, they all bled together. I finished my shift at the mini-mart at 2 a.m. The manager, Dave, a man who smelled permanently of stale coffee and regret, handed me my cash in a greasy envelope. "Don't get jumped," he grunted, not looking up from his racing form. The walk home was 10 blocks through a neighborhood that grew quieter and darker with each step. I had my keys threaded between my knuckles, a habit Sienna had drilled into me. A car slowed beside me, and my heart leapt into my throat. It was the old Honda. The passenger window rolled down. "Get in," Sienna said, her face etched with exhaustion under the streetlight. I slid into the seat, the familiar scent of fry grease and her cheap lemon shampoo enveloping me. On the console sat a single, slightly smushed hamburger in a wax paper wrapper. "They were going to throw it out," she said, nodding at it. "Thought you might be hungry." We sat in the empty parking lot of a shuttered Kmart, sharing the cold burger. The silence was comfortable, worn smooth by shared fatigue. "I hate that you're this tired," Sienna said suddenly, not looking at me, staring straight ahead at the graffiti tag storefront. "I hate that you're more tired," I countered, taking a bite. The burger was lukewarm, the pickles soggy. It was the best thing I'd ever tasted. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. Stalemate. She glanced at me. "This isn't what 16 is supposed to be. Tessa, what is it supposed to be?" I asked, the question genuine. She was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know. Not this." She started the car. "But this is what we have. So we do it." The bullying didn't stop with Brittany's hallway humiliation. It evolved. It became whispers, stolen homework, accidental shoves in the crowded hallway. I tried code cement. I hardened. I ignored it. Then I made the cut for the National STEM Scholars Competition. My project on algorithmic efficiency in low-power processors was dry as dust. But it worked. It was my rose. A big, fat, glorious rose that could lead to scholarship money and real attention from colleges. Brittany's response was nuclear. I came back from gym class to find a crowd snickering around my locker. Someone had spray painted in jagged, neon pink letters, "Scholarship Slut." Below it, taped crudely, was a photoshopped picture of me, my yearbook photo glued next to the grainy online headshot of Mr. Henderson, the 50-something science fair coordinator. The implication was as vicious as it was clear. The laughter was a physical wave. My stomach turned to liquid. Code cement cracked. I turned and ran, not caring where. Just away. I ended up in the narrow, chain-link fenced alley behind the gym, gasping for air, the hot, shameful tears finally breaking through. I didn't hear her approach. I just felt a hand on my shoulder, different from Liam's empty pat. This one was firm, real. Tessa, Sienna, again, in her diner uniform. She must have come straight from work. "How?" I choked out. "Mrs. Garcia from next door. Her daughter goes here." She saw the locker and called me. Sienna's voice was calm, but her eyes were like flint. "Who did it?" "It doesn't matter," I whispered, wiping my face, feeling pathetic. "It matters," she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. "Show me." She marched me back inside, through the thinning after-school crowds. The locker was still there, a monument to my humiliation. Brittany and 2 of her friends were lingering nearby, savoring their handiwork. Sienna didn't even look at me. She walked right up to Brittany, her posture deceptively still. "Brittany Chase." Brittany smirked, crossing her arms. "Here to clean it up?" "I think the janitor's closet is that way." Sienna ignored her. She pulled out her phone, dot a basic, pay-as-you-go model dot, and held it up, not taking a picture, just holding it pointed at Brittany. "Go ahead. Say it again. What you wrote. Spell it out for me." Brittany's smirk faltered. "What?" The words on the locker, and the implication with that photograph. Sienna's voice was low, clear, and carried in the now silent hallway. I'm recording. For my lawyer. Slander. Libel. Defamation of character. Creating a hostile educational environment. I'm sure your father, the lawyer, can explain the nuances. I'd love for him to receive a detailed file with your narration to review. Brittany paled. You're bluffing. You can't afford a lawyer. Try me, Sienna said, taking a step closer. She wasn't tall, but in that moment, she towered. Tessa's grades, her competition results, they're a matter of record. They exist. Her achievements are real. What do you have, Brittany? Aside from your father's Amex and the moral compass of a feral cat? She gestured with the phone. So, speak up. Let's get your version for the record. Or, you can get a sponge and a bottle of cleaner and erase every last bit of this trash before I call the principal and the police. In that order, the silence was absolute. Brittany looked from Sienna's impassive face to the phone, to her suddenly nervous friends. The bluff was flawless, and the fear in Brittany's eyes showed she couldn't call it. Muttering curses, she stalked off toward the janitor's closet, her friends scrambling after her. Sienna lowered the phone. She hadn't been recording. She put an arm around my shoulders. A quick, hard squeeze. Come on, we're leaving. In the car. I was shaking, the adrenaline crashing. You were amazing. No, she said, starting the engine. I was angry. She looked at me, and the flint in her eyes softened. Just a fraction. Listen, Tessa, people like that, they want to push you into the dirt. They want you to think you belong there, in the cement, with the grime and the weeds. She put the car in drive. Don't let them. Grow anyway. Be the damn rose that cracks the pavement. Because a rose is still a rose, no matter where it grows. The check arrived in a stiff, expensive envelope with a San Francisco return address. Inside was a cashier's check for $5,000 and the latest, sleekest iPhone, still in its box. The note was on heavy bond paper, scrawled in Liam's impulsive hand. Tess, closed the Series A. Told you I'd make it. Buy yourself something nice. The phone's so we can stay in touch. Liam. It felt like a slap. A shiny, expensive, dismissive slap. My face burned. This was his answer to everything. Money. A payoff for his absence. I threw the envelope on the kitchen table like it was contaminated. Sienna picked it up, her expression unreadable. She examined the check. Then the phone. Put the check in your college savings account, she said finally, her voice flat. Consider it an emergency fund from a distant relative. The phone. You can sell it. Use the cash for textbooks. I don't want his money. I spat, the bitterness shocking me. I know, she said softly, but pride doesn't pay tuition. Your brain does. This, she tapped the check, is just fuel. Don't give it more meaning than it has. Later that night, I heard her on the balcony, her voice a low, tense murmur. I crept near the sliding glass door. No, Liam, she doesn't need a new phone. She needs a brother who remembers her birthday. Don't you dare tell me about pressure. You have no idea what pressure is. Do you even know she's terrified of the dark? No, of course not, because you weren't here when the nightmares started. Do you know she's allergic to peanuts? Mom always carried the EpiPen. Now I do. Do you know anything about her at all? Other than that she gets good grades, and that makes you look good by proxy? Just save it. Congratulations on your success. Liam, really? The call ended. I heard a long, shuddering exhale. I slipped back to my room, the words terrified of the dark echoing. I hadn't thought she knew. I'd been so careful to hide the nightlight. Graduation day was a blur of too hot polyester robes and the smell of cut grass. I stood at the podium, my valedictorian speech a neatly typed sheet in my sweaty hands. I'd written about resilience, about the future, generic, safe. I looked out at the sea of faces, friends, parents beaming. My row was empty. No mom, no dad, no Liam, but in the third row, on the aisle, sat Sienna. she'd saved for months for the navy blue dress she wore. Simple and a little too formal for the occasion. Her hands were clasped in her lap, her eyes fixed on me. The words on the page seemed hollow. I took a breath, deviating from the script. And so, as we look forward, we carry with us the lessons of the past. I said, my voice gaining strength. But sometimes, the most important lessons don't come from a classroom. They come from the people who show up. I looked directly at her. They come from those who teach you that family isn't just a word in a biology textbook. It's the person who works 2 jobs so you can have 1 less worry. It's the one who stands between you and the world on a bad day, not because they have to, but because they choose to. My throat tightened. So, I'd like to dedicate this speech, this achievement, and whatever comes next, to my sister, Sienna. You taught me that home isn't always a place. Sometimes, it's a person. Thank you. The applause was loud, but all I saw was Sienna, her hands covering her mouth, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. It was the first time I'd ever seen her truly break, and it wasn't from sadness, it was from being seen. The party afterward was at Brittany's mansion. I didn't go. Sienna and I got takeout Thai food and ate it on our cramped living room floor, laughing at nothing. My phone buzzed. Liam. Tess. Valedictorian. That's my girl. His voice was loud, blurred by background party noise, music, laughter. Stanford. Huh. Welcome to the big leagues. When you get to the Bay, you gotta let me show you around. The Real Silicon Valley. The parties. The connections, you're gonna love it. You're gonna fit right in up here. I watched Sienna carefully peel the lid off her green curry container. A small, content smile on her face as she savored the smell. My Real Silicon Valley. My real connection. Thanks, Liam, I said, my voice even. But I think I already got a pretty good head start on the real world right here. I hung up, placed the phone face down on the carpet, and reached for a spring roll. This, I said, gesturing with it at the cardboard containers between us. At her. At our tiny, quiet, complete celebration. This is perfect. Sienna looked at me, her eyes still a little red, and smiled. A real, full, unguarded smile. Yeah, she said, clinking her water bottle against my spring roll. It really is. Stanford was a different planet, one where the air smelled like eucalyptus, ambition, and money. It was beautiful, intellectually electric, and utterly, profoundly lonely. My full-ride scholarship was a lifeline, but it didn't cover the gnawing fear of being an imposter among trust fund babies and legacy admits. My career plan was simple: survive, excel, and get a return on Sienna's investment that would shake the world. I turned survival into a science. My schedule was a color-coded masterpiece of sleep deprivation. 6 a.m. library shift, classes, afternoons as a CS department tutor, evenings as a barista at the Student Union Cafe until midnight. I existed on free coffee, snatched naps, and the weekly Sunday night call with Sienna. It was our anchor. Code Rose, I'd say, curled on the floor of my dorm. The single room cost extra, so I shared, whispering into the phone. Aced the data structures midterm. Professor said my algorithm was elegant. I could hear the smile in her voice, tired but warm. Of course it was. Code cement here. The diner's new manager is a micromanaging troll. But the tips are okay. How's the social stuff? Social stuff meant, are you making friends? The answer was complicated. I had study partners, group project allies, and cafe regulars who knew my name, but no one who knew about the code cement days. That part of me was sealed off, reserved for one person 300 miles south, in a fading apartment that still felt more like home than this sunny paradise. It's fine, I'd say, which was the truth. It was fine. It was all a means to an end. Liam existed on the periphery of this new world, a buzzing, intermittent nuisance. He'd call every few months. His timing always spectacularly bad, usually during a precious sleep window or a critical study session. Tess, Palo Alto. Baby, you're in my backyard now. His voice was always too loud, underscored by the hum of a trendy coffee shop or the thump of bass from a club. We gotta sync up. I'm killing it. Meeting with VCs at Sequoia next week. The grind. You know, that's great. Liam, I'd mumble, squinting at a screen full of code. Listen, I'm taking some associates to Spago Friday. You should come. Wear something nice. I'll introduce you around. Networking. Tess, it's everything out here. An invitation to be his shiny Stanford scholarship, little sister. A prop in his personal narrative of success. I have a shift, I'd say, which was usually true. A shift? Come on, ditch it. This is more important. You need to learn how the real world works. The real world that I thought of Sienna's hands, red and cracked from dishwater. I thought of the cold burger in the Kmart parking lot. My real world has a tuition bill due. Liam, I'll catch you next time. He'd sigh, the sound full of performative disappointment. You and Sienna, I swear, all work, no play. You gotta live a little. And he'd hang up, off to live a lot. Presumably, Sienna never asked about him. When I'd mention his calls, she'd just make a non-committal sound, a quiet and change the subject to my classes or her new online accounting course. She was still back home, still in the same apartment, still working. My success was her exit strategy, and I felt the weight of that with every line of code I debugged. Every lecture I forced myself to stay awake through. The breakthrough came sophomore year. The internship, Kestrel Partners, the name alone sent a jolt through the department. It wasn't just a venture capital firm, it was the realm of legends. Getting an internship, there was like being anointed. The interview was a brutal gauntlet point, 3 technical cases, a grilling on market trends, a psychometric test that felt designed to break you. I walked out feeling shredded. The acceptance email arrived at 3:17 a.m. I was awake, finishing a problem set. I read it 7 times. Then I called Sienna. It rang 4 times before she picked up, her voice thick with sleep and instant worry. Tessa, what's wrong? Code rose, I whispered, my voice cracking. A really, really big one. I told her. The silence on the other end stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Sienna, I heard a shaky breath. Kestrel? The Kestrel? Yes. Another pause. Then, a sound I'd rarely heard. A genuine, unguarded laugh, tinged with disbelief and triumph. I knew it. I knew it. See? Cement cracks. Roses grow. She was crying. I realized. Happy tears. I'm so proud of you. Your parents, they'd be so. We sat in silence for a moment, connected by the hum of the line and the shared magnitude of it. Kestrel was a different kind of battlefield. All glass, steel, and silent, ruthless competition. The other interns were from Harvard, Wharton, MIT. They talked about ski trips to Gstaad and their parents' yacht clubs. I talked about runtime optimization and market saturation curves. I made myself indispensable by being the first in, the last out, and the one who could find the flaw in a business model that everyone else was too dazzled by the founder's pedigree to see. My desk was next to the office of Eleanor Vance. The Eleanor Vance, a woman in her 60s with a silver bob sharp enough to cut glass and a reputation for eviscerating poor logic. She was a specter, gliding through the halls, her presence causing a palpable drop in temperature. I'd only ever heard her speak in meetings, short, razor-sharp questions that left seasoned entrepreneurs stammering. One Friday, a meeting ran long. A team of us, interns included, were packed into a conference room, listening to a pitch from a pair of boy genius founders from Caltech. Their idea was a social app for pet owners, Tinder for dogs. One joked nervously. Their slides were slick, their traction numbers impressive, their confidence sky high. Eleanor, at the head of the table, had been silent for 20 minutes. Then she steepled her fingers. Explain your monetization strategy. In detail, not the premium subscription bullet point. The actual mechanics of extracting value from a user whose primary emotional connection is to a French bulldog. The room froze. The founders blinked. The lead, a guy named Jason, launched into a rehearsed spiel about targeted advertising and data-driven affiliate marketing. Eleanor cut him off. You're assuming a level of engagement and commercial intent that your use case doesn't support. People post pictures of their pets for dopamine hits, not to shop for organic dog treats. Your model is a leaky bucket. You're acquiring users you cannot monetize at the cost you're paying. Next, it was a death sentence, delivered in 3 sentences. The partners around the table nodded sagely, as if they'd been thinking the same thing. The founders deflated. My heart hammered against my ribs. I'd been running the numbers in my head, comparing their user acquisition cost to the average revenue per user for similar lifestyle apps. The math didn't just leak, it gushed. A partner, trying to salvage the meeting, asked a feeble question about community building. Eleanor's gaze swept the room, icy and dismissive. It landed on me, probably because I was the only one not pretending to take notes. I was just staring at my own scribbled calculations. You, she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it silenced the room completely. The intern, you look like you're having a thought, or indigestion. Which is it? Every eye turned to me. My mouth went dry. I thought of Brittany in the hallway, of Sienna's voice saying don't let them. I thought of cement. I straightened my spine. The math, ma'am, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. The CAC is unsustainable, as you said, but the pivot you mentioned, from commerce to service, I'm not sure a premium subscription for dog playdate filtering is the right axis. I took a breath, plunging into the abyss. When I was tutoring and working retail, I saw a need. Busy people, new pet owners. They don't need another social network. They need trusted, vetted, last-minute help. Walkers, sitters, basic grooming, the gig economy, but hyperlocal and quality guaranteed. The app's existing user base is a built-in supply side. The monetization could be a transaction fee on a service people already need and pay for. It's not about selling them toys. It's about saving them time and anxiety. The silence was absolute. Jason and his co-founder were staring at me, a mix of horror and dawning curiosity. The partners looked stunned. Eleanor Vance's expression didn't change. She studied me for what felt like an eternity. Your name, she said finally. Tessa Williams. She gave a single, slow nod. Gig economy for pet care. Obvious. Once someone says it, her gaze shifted to the Chasen founders. Rework the model. Focus on utility, not vanity. Ms. Williams's insight about supply-side leverage from your existing user base is correct. It's your only viable path forward. She stood, gathering her things. Meeting adjourned. As she passed my chair, she didn't break stride. Saturday, 10 a.m., my house in Atherton. Coffee. Bring your brain, not your resume. She was gone before I could process the words. The room erupted into a low buzz. One of the senior associates clapped me on the shoulder. Holy shit, kid, you just got a golden ticket. Or walked into the lion's den. Not sure which. Liam found out about the internship through a vague, braggy post I'd been tagged in by the university's career center. He showed up at my dorm unannounced on a Wednesday night, reeking of expensive cologne and desperation. His company, I'd gleaned from scattered conversations, was floundering. Tess, look at you. He pulled me into a hug that felt like being wrapped in debt. He looked older, lines of stress around his eyes that his 10 couldn't hide. Kestrel, I knew you had it in you. Eleanor Vance, she's a legend. He took me to a painfully trendy restaurant in Menlo Park, ordering for us both without asking, talking a mile a minute about his pivot, his vision. The idiots who didn't understand his market disruption. So, he said, leaning inconspiratorially over seared scallops I couldn't afford. You've got Vance's ear now. That's huge. I've got this new deck. Totally refined. It's a winner. You gotta get me a meeting. An intro. Just 15 minutes of her time. The ask hung in the air. Greasy and obvious. I put my fork down. Liam, I'm an intern. I fetch coffee and build financial models. I don't get meetings with Eleanor Vance. Don't sell yourself short, he said, waving a dismissive hand. She invited you to her house. That's not nothing. Look, it's all about leverage. You have access now. Use it. Family helps family. The phrase, coming from him, was a gut punch. My leverage is my work ethic and my analysis. I said, my voice cool, not my connections, not even to you. His smile hardened. Work ethic, analysis. Christ, you sound like Sienna. So naive. This valley runs on who you know. I'm trying to teach you. Sienna taught me to be responsible for myself. I shot back. And my work is my responsibility. I won't risk my credibility to pitch a deal I haven't vetted and don't believe in. The rest of the meal passed in stilted, hostile silence. When the bill came, he slapped down a corporate card. Suit yourself, he said, his tone final. But don't come crying to me when you learn the hard way how things really work. He stood, adjusting his blazer. You and Sienna, you'd rather struggle on principle than win on savvy. It's a loser's mindset. He left me there, at the table, with the ruins of an expensive meal and the cold certainty that the brother I'd once known was gone, replaced by this hollow, grasping stranger. That Saturday, I stood on the porch of a stunning, minimalist home in Atherton, my heart in my throat. Eleanor Vance answered the door herself, dressed in jeans and a sweater. Williams, come in. The coffee's just brewed. We didn't talk about Kestrel, or pet apps, or venture capital. She asked me about my tutoring job, about the economics of a 24-hour mini-mart, about what I saw people really spend money on, worry about, need. I found myself talking about Sienna, about code cement and code rose, about the relentless, unglamorous math of survival. She listened, her keen eyes missing nothing. Finally, she said, most of the people I meet in this town have never had a real problem. Their problems are burn rate and exit strategy. You've had real problems. It gives you a different lens, a valuable one. She offered me the full-time analyst position on the spot, contingent on graduation. The work will be harder than anything you've ever done. The hours will make your current schedule look like a vacation, but you'll learn, and you'll have a seat at the table. She paused, sipping her coffee. Your sister, the one who held the line. She's the reason you're here, isn't she? Yes, I said, the words simple and absolute. Eleanor nodded. Remember that. In this business, it's easy to start climbing and forget who held the ladder, or who you're supposed to pull up after you. Don't forget, Williams. It's the only thing that separates the builders from the bullshitters. I left her house, the California sun warming my face, a seismic shift in my future, now a firm contract in my bag. I pulled out my phone. I had a text from Liam, a link to his latest pitch deck with a single question mark. I deleted it. Then I called Sienna. Hey, I said, the wind catching in my throat. Code Rose, the biggest one yet. Tell me. Her voice came, a steady anchor from 300 miles away. I told her everything. The internship, the meeting, Eleanor Vance, the job offer, the weight of Liam's visit. I told her about the coffee, about the different lens. There was a long silence on the other end. Then, softly, she said, you did it, Tessa. You're really getting out. We're getting out. Sienna, I corrected, the promise solidifying into a plan as I said it. Just hang on a little longer. I'm coming for you. The silence this time was different. Full. I'm holding on. She whispered. I'm right here. Kestrel wasn't a job. It was an intellectual boot camp designed to break the week. The hours were a brutal, joke .16-hour days were the norm. 20-hour sprints before a board meeting were expected. My world narrowed to a glowing laptop screen, endless spreadsheets, and the sharp, caffeinated smell of ambition and fear. I analyzed hundreds of pitch decks, listened to founders spin silicon and fairy dust into billion-dollar valuations, and learned to spot the flaw, the single thread that, when pulled, would unravel the whole tapestry. My title was analyst, which at Kestrel meant professional skeptic and spreadsheet janitor. I was the youngest and least connected person in every room, a senior associate named Mark, with a watch that cost more than Sienna's car. Loved to delegate by dumping his most tedious due diligence on my desk at 6 p.m. on a Friday. Run the full comparables analysis, back to 15. I need it for the Monday partner sync. It was a test, a hazing ritual. I ran the analysis. I ran it twice. I found a discrepancy in the market growth projections he'd lazily copied from a Gartner report. I didn't just flag it. I rebuilt the model with fresher data, sourced from industry blogs and niche analyst reports I'd found by digging deeper than anyone else had bothered to. I sent it to him at 2 a.m. with a concise note explaining the variance. He never thanked me, but at the Monday meeting, when a partner questioned the growth assumptions, Mark, without missing a beat, said, "My analyst, Tessa Williams, caught that. She's redone the model with more current data." Tessa? He gestured to me, the ghost in the corner. All eyes turned. I walked them through the new numbers. My voice steady despite my heart trying to punch its way out of my ribs. Eleanor Vance, at the head of the table, watched me, her expression inscrutable. When I finished, she gave a single nod. Better. That was it. But in the currency of Kestrel, it was a fortune. Mark stopped dumping his grunt work on me. He started asking for my opinion. Quietly, my break came with a pitch from a nervous, sweating team of ex-Google engineers. They'd built a SaaS platform for small to mid-size law firms, case management, billing, client portals. It was solid, but boring. The legal tech space was crowded. The other analysts were lukewarm. But I saw something. I'd spent enough time listening to Sienna talk about the archaic, expensive software at her accounting job, the inefficiency that bled hours from her week. The pain point was real, but the go-to-market strategy was all wrong. They were targeting the big firms who had custom-built solutions. They were missing the Siennas of the world. In the write-up, I went against the grain. Recommend. Pass on Series B. But I laid out a counterproposal, a smaller, strategic seed investment with the condition of a hard pivot, target the underserved. Cost-conscious solo practitioners and small practices offer a brutally simple, modular product. Price it like a utility, not a luxury. My reasoning wasn't just from market reports. It was from remembering Sienna's fury at her software's $200 per user monthly fee, a crippling cost for a small business. Eleanor called me into her office. She had my memo on her desk, covered in her precise, spidery annotations. The small law firm play, she said, not looking up. Unsexy. Low margin. Why? Because they're desperate, I said, the words coming from a place of deep, personal understanding. They're drowning in overhead and administrative work. They don't need AI-powered legal prediction. They need to stop wasting 3 hours a week on manual billing. They need a solution that doesn't require a PhD to use. It's a painkiller, not a vitamin. And there are a lot more of them than there are white shoe Manhattan firms. She looked up, a flicker of something in her eyes. Painkiller, not a vitamin. I like that. The partnership hates it. They think it's small potatoes. I held my ground. Then let Kestrel pass. But I've run the numbers on the total addressable market for small potatoes. It's a $12 billion field. A slow smile touched her lips. You have a founder's nerve. Williams. Or a fool's. She pushed the memo back to me. Find a co-investor. Run the deal. You're on point. Don't embarrass me. That deal, LexiServe, became my proving ground. I found a co-investor, a smaller firm that specialized in unsexy B2B software. I negotiated terms, guided the pivot, and held the founders' hands through the messy, unglamorous rebuild. 18 months later, they were profitable, growing at 30% quarter over quarter, and being hailed as a quiet, category-defining success. My name started appearing in memos. I got a promotion. I was no longer just the analyst who caught mistakes. I was the one who found gold where others saw dirt. My success was a mirror, and Liam hated his reflection. His own company, SWYFT Connect, a vague social discovery app, had flamed out spectacularly. The Series A money evaporated. The vision proved to be a feature, not a product, and investors cut their losses. The news was a blip on TechCrunch. I read it with a hollow feeling in my chest. The calls started again, but the tone had changed. The bravado was gone, replaced by a wheedling, resentful need. Tess, you're not going to believe the betrayal. He'd start, his voice slurry, sometimes in the middle of the day. The VPs, they had no vision. The board was stacked against me from the start. I was ahead of my time. I'd listen, typing an email with one hand. I'm sorry, Liam. That's tough. Tough? It's a bloodbath. I'm getting eaten alive out here. A pause, heavy with expectation. Listen, I know you're killing it at Kestrel. Eleanor Vance loves you. I heard about the LexiServe deal. That's amazing. Thank you. Maybe you could put in a word? For your big brother? I've got this new idea. It's cleaner, leaner, just an intro. To anyone. I just need a foot in the door again. Liam, I can't. It's a conflict. You know that. Conflict? A bitter laugh. Family helping family is a conflict now? Jesus. Tess, it's a coffee. 15 minutes. What happened to you? You used to look up to me. The guilt he aimed for found its mark. But it was blunted now, sheathed in a thick layer of fatigue and clarity. I'm not having this argument again. I'd say, my voice flat. I have to go. Before I could hang up, his tone would shift, turning dark. Fine. You know, Mom and Dad would be ashamed. Seeing you sit on your high horse while I'm drowning. The first time he said it, it winded me. The 10th time, it just made me tired. I started sending his calls to voicemail. Eleanor noticed. She noticed everything. Over a one-on-one lunch, grilled chicken and kale that she barely touched, she said. The dead weight. It's the hardest part. I looked up. Confused. Family. Friends. The people who think your success is a life raft for their failures. They'll cling, and if you let them, they'll pull you under with them. Sentiment has sunk more promising careers than bad bets ever have. She speared a piece of chicken. You have a decision to make. Williams, are you building a lifeboat or a lighthouse? Lifeboats get swamped. Lighthouses stand. They warn, but they don't rescue the determined fools who run aground. I thought of Sienna, holding the line. My true north. My lighthouse. Liam was the ship, blaring his horn, demanding I steer into the rocks for him. I don't want to abandon anyone, I said quietly. Abandonment is a choice they make when they refuse to swim on their own. Eleanor said, then, almost as an afterthought, how is your sister? The accountant. The shift caught me off guard. She's holding on. Back home. She should be here, Eleanor stated, as if it were a simple fact. Talent is worthless if it's exhausted by survival. Bring her here. You have the means now. Don't you? I did. The LexiServe success had come with a substantial bonus. I'd been funneling it into savings, paralyzed by a fear of somehow messing it up, of it not being enough. Eleanor's words cut through the paralysis. Bring her here. I didn't ask. I didn't suggest. I booked a flight, rented a car, and showed up at our old apartment on a Friday evening. Sienna opened the door, her face etched with surprise. Tessa, what's wrong? Pack a bag, I said, walking in. The apartment was exactly the same. A time capsule of struggle. A week's worth. We're going to California. She stared at me, dish towel in hand. What? I can't just. You can. I'm not asking. I took the towel from her. Your sacrifice ends tonight. Sienna, right now. I bought a house. In Palo Alto. It has a guest room with a window that gets the morning sun. I'm driving you to the airport. And you're getting on a plane. And you are going to see it. And then you are going to stay. Her eyes filled with tears. But she shook her head, the old resistance rising. Tessa, my job. The lease. I can't just. I've paid the lease break fee. I've spoken to your boss. He's a reasonable man. He understands a family emergency. I've enrolled you in the Accelerated Accounting Certificate Program at Foothill College. It starts in 4 weeks. The tuition is paid. I took her hands, which were trembling. You held the line. Sienna, you held it until your fingers bled. Now it's my turn. Let me hold it. Come home with me. She came. She cried silently the entire flight. Her face turned to the window. When we pulled into the driveway of the modest California craftsman-style house I'd bought, she let out a soft sob. It's too much. Tessa, it's a house, I said, my own throat tight. With a mortgage I can afford. It's just a house, but it can be a home. Our home. She took the guest room. She enrolled in her classes. Slowly, the permanent crease of worry between her brows began to soften. She got a part-time job at a local nonprofit, helping with their books. She started smiling at breakfast. A real, unburdened smile. She was building a life, not just enduring one. And then Liam found out. His first visit was unannounced. He pulled up in a new, flashy BMW that I knew he couldn't afford. He toured the house like a prospective buyer, critiquing the finishes. Solid, I guess. Should have gone for more open concept. Though, really drives resale. He stayed for dinner. I cooked. Sienna was quiet, listening as Liam held forth on the realities of the Silicon Valley property market, the mistakes I was making with my investment strategy. He drank 2 glasses of my expensive wine very fast. So, Sienna, he said, leaning back, finally acknowledging her. California treating you okay? Found a good salon yet? You gotta update the look. Babe, this is the land of the fresh start. He gestured vaguely at her simple blouse and slacks. Sienna looked down at her plate, a faint flush on her cheeks. I'm fine. Liam, I like my job. Job. He chuckled, a condescending sound. At that charity place? Cute. Good for you. Keeps you busy. He turned to me. See, this is what I'm talking about. Tess. Image. Perception. Sienna's a smart girl. She could be doing more. Networking. Supporting you. Not just, he waved a hand. Bookkeeping for tree huggers. The air left the room. I saw Sienna's spine go rigid. My own grip tightened on my fork. Liam, I said, my voice dangerously calm. Sienna's career is her business, and her work supports organizations that actually help people. I'd say that's more meaningful than most of what gets funded in this town. He held up his hands in mock surrender. Hey, no judgment, just thinking about the big picture. When you're at my level, you're at what level? Exactly? Sienna's voice cut through, quiet but diamond sharp. We both turned to her. She was looking directly at Liam, her eyes clear. The last I checked, Tessa bought this house. Tessa's building her career. You're living in a sublet in Mountain View and borrowing your friend's car. Aren't you, Liam? The one you drove up in? Liam's face went from smug to scarlet in an instant. That's temporary. Strategic downsizing. You wouldn't understand the pivot cycle. I understand balance sheets, Sienna said, putting her napkin on the table. And I understand that running through someone else's money isn't a pivot. It's a spiral. She stood. Dinner was delicious. Tessa, I have some studying to do. She walked out, her head high. Liam was furious. What the hell was that? You let her talk to me like that? I didn't let her do anything. I said, ice in my veins. She's a grown woman. And she's right. The BMW. Liam? Really? It's a lease. It's about maintaining appearances. You think anyone in this town takes you seriously if you drive a Honda? You two are so goddamn small time. You have no idea how the game is played. He shoved his chair back, the legs screeching on the hardwood. I'm out of here. Thanks for the lecture. After he slammed the front door, I found Sienna on the back patio, staring into the dark. I'm sorry, I said. Don't be, she whispered. Then, softer, he's drowning. Tessa, and he wants to pull everyone down with him. I stood beside her, our shoulders almost touching. I know, I said, but I won't let him pull you under. Ever. We stood in silence for a long time, listening to the distant hum of the freeway, the comfortable, solid presence of the house at our backs. The forge of Kestrel had tempered me, but the real fire, I realized, was here, in the quiet battle to protect the peace we'd built. And for the first time, I was ready for it. Success at Ether Ventures was a different beast. It wasn't just the money, though there was a staggering amount of that. It was the quiet authority that came with being a founding partner at one of Silicon Valley's fastest rising funds. My name opened doors, got my calls returned, and appeared in headlines that used words like savvy and prescient. I had built the lighthouse Eleanor Vance told me to build. The view from the top was brilliant and utterly isolating, except for one person. My first act, once the fund's first major exit poured capital back to the partners, was to dismantle the architecture of Sienna's sacrifice. I didn't ask. I executed. I scheduled a meeting with her at a quiet cafe in downtown Palo Alto. She arrived, flustered, straight from her nonprofit office. Tessa, what's this about? I have a board report due at 4. I slid a single sheet of paper across the table. It was a statement from a student loan servicer. The balance was 0, paid in full, as of 9 a.m. this morning. She stared at it, her mouth slightly open. Tessa, no, this is too much. This was my responsibility. It was a shackle. I corrected gently, and I just cut it off. I placed a set of car keys next. The Honda is on its last legs. There's a new Toyota hybrid parked outside. In your name, reliable, safe, and the insurance is prepaid for the year. Finally, I put a Black American Express card on the table. This is a card on my account. For anything, groceries, clothes, a weekend in Napa, a donation to your nonprofit. No questions, no limits. Tears welled in her eyes, but she shook her head, pushing the card back. I can't. This isn't sharing. Tessa, this is charity. I have my job. I have my own money. I took her hands, forcing her to look at me. Sienna, listen to me. For 8 years, you spent every dime you had on me, on us. You bought my textbooks with your tip money. You paid the electric bill instead of getting a haircut. You kept a roof over my head instead of taking a single vacation. This, I said, tapping the card, is not charity. This is the dividend on the investment you made in me when no one else would. You're not cashing a check. You're collecting a return, and you will spend it. That's an order from your CEO. A watery laugh escaped her. You're impossible. I'm your sister, and I'm paying you back. I softened my tone. Take the car. Keep the card for emergencies, or for fun, which you are legally required to have now. But most importantly, I said, pulling out a final envelope, quit the part-time gig at the nonprofit. Go full-time. Let me cover the difference in your salary so you can actually focus on the work you love, not just scraping by. Be their director of finance. Build something for yourself. She finally broke, a few tears slipping down her cheeks. She took the envelope, her fingers trembling. A director, she whispered. The director, I said, smiling. My sister, the director. She accepted, on her own terms. She kept her job, now with a title and a salary I secretly supplemented. And she used the card, not sparingly, for things like a much-needed new laptop and a donation to a women's shelter that made her glow for a week. The victory was in seeing the constant, low-grade anxiety finally leave her eyes. She'd done her tour in the trenches. I'd just given her an honorable discharge. Liam was a harder problem. He'd become a ghost haunting the edges of my new life, bitter and adrift. Sienna, ever the peacemaker, brought it up one evening as we were cleaning up after dinner. He's your brother. Tessa, I know what he is. I live with the memory of it every day. But he's flailing. Giving him a life raft. It might be the only way to get him to stop trying to climb into ours. I hated the logic because it was sound. He'll see it as an entitlement, not a lifeline. Probably, she said, wiping a dish. But it gets him out of your hair and into a structure. Put him somewhere he can't do any damage. Give him enough rope to either climb or hang himself. But do it far away from the core business. So, I created a role. Vice President of Business Development. The title was impressive. The duties were vaporous. Cultivating strategic partnerships. Enhancing brand visibility. Networking. It came with a staggering salary, a generous expense account, and a beautiful, empty corner office with a view of the parking lot. I summoned him to ether. He strutted in, already wearing the cloak of the title I'd only just offered. Tessa, finally, I knew you'd come around. VP of Biz Dev, smart. I've got a killer network. I'll have deals flowing in here in a month. Liam, I said, standing behind my desk, not offering a seat. This position is a courtesy, a gesture. Your responsibilities are clearly outlined in the contract. You will report to Monica in marketing. You will not commit the firm to any agreements, verbal or written, without her and legal sign-off. You will not interact with any of our portfolio companies without prior clearance. Your expense account is for legitimate business entertainment, not personal enrichment. This is a job, not a ticket to the good life. Break these rules, and you're out. Instantly. No second chances. Do you understand? His face went through a fascinating transformation. Triumph, to confusion, to dawning resentment. You're giving me a babysitter and a glorified PR job? I'm giving you a paycheck and a title. I said coldly, what you do with it is up to you. Take it or leave it. I saw the calculation in his eyes, the need for the money, the car, the facade, warred with his wounded pride. Pride lost. He forced a smile. Hey, I get it. Gotta prove myself. I'll play by the rules. Little sis, you won't regret this. I already did. The transformation was nauseatingly swift. The leased BMW became a purchased Porsche. The off-the-rack suits became bespoke from a tailor in North Beach. He got a membership at the most exclusive club in San Francisco, where he began networking with other vaporous VPs and minor socialites. He moved into a luxury high-rise in Soma. He was suddenly an expert on wine, on art, on the scene, and he was utterly, visibly ashamed of Sienna. He started with helpful suggestions. We were all at a bland, upscale restaurant he'd chosen. You know, Sienna, my personal shopper at Neiman's is a miracle worker. She could do wonders for you. Get you out of those librarian separates. He chuckled, as if it were a shared joke. Sienna sipped her water. I like my separates. They're comfortable and paid for. It's not about comfort. Babe, it's about messaging, he said, too loudly. When you're married to a VP at a top fund, even if it's just for now, that image is everything. People talk. What people? Liam? I asked. My steak knife, suddenly very interesting. And what exactly are they saying? You know, he waved a hand. That my wife works a 9 to 5 at a charity. It doesn't project success. It projects a lack of ambition. Sienna set her glass down with a precise click. My work provides financial literacy training to single mothers. What does your work provide? Exactly. Besides a robust dry cleaning bill? Liam's smile tightened. See? That's the attitude. No vision. I'm talking about the big leagues. Sienna, the golf courses where deals are made. The galas where futures are built. You'd rather count beans for the poor. Someone has to, she said quietly, and the conversation died. The absences started. Business dinners that ran past midnight. Conferences in Las Vegas or Miami that seemed to happen monthly. He'd regale me with boring stories about the heavy hitters he'd met, the deals he was circling. I checked with Monica. His official business output was zero. His expense reports were masterpieces of creative fiction. The breaking point, the first real crack, came on a Tuesday. Sienna showed up at my office unannounced, her face a careful mask of calm. She didn't say a word. She placed a small, crumpled receipt on my desk. It was from Shreve Company, an infamous jeweler in the city. The item was described as 18K diamond hoop earrings. The price was eye-watering. The date was last Friday, when Liam was supposedly at a partner summit in Half Moon Bay. She hadn't received any earrings. I felt a cold fury settle in my veins. Where did you find this? In the pocket of his Brioni suit jacket, the one he wore to the summit. I was taking it to the cleaners. Her voice was terrifyingly even. I confronted him last night, and a flicker of pain finally crossed her face. He said I was snooping, that he bought them for a client, a female client, as a business gift. When I asked what kind of business wherein that gives $8,000 earrings as gifts, he got angry. Tell me what he said. Sienna. She took a shaky breath, looking out my window at the glittering skyline he so desperately wanted to be a part of. He said, for God's sake, Sienna, look at you. You look like someone's middle-aged mom, which I guess you are. We're in California now. We're supposed to be living, not just surviving. Jenna from the marketing firm. She gets it. She's vibrant. She has style. You have spreadsheets. She recited it verbatim, each word a lash. I was on my feet, my hands braced on the desk. I'll fire him right now. I'll throw him out of the building. No, her command stopped me. She looked at me, her eyes clear and heartbreakingly resolute. Not yet. That's what he wants. A dramatic blow-up, so he can be the victim. The poor guy, persecuted by his ice queen sister and his frumpy, jealous wife. She picked up the receipt, folding it neatly. He's made his choice. Tessa, he's told me exactly what I am to him now. An inconvenience, a piece of the past that doesn't fit his new decor. She met my gaze. We don't blow up the cage yet. We just stop feeding the animal inside. Let him get hungry. Let him make a mistake that isn't just cruel, but stupid. Then we act. I had never admired her more, or hated Liam more fiercely. What do you need? I need a lawyer, she said, the words final. A good one, quietly. And I need you to not say a word to him. Let him think he's getting away with it. Let him get comfortable, arrogant. I nodded. The strategic part of my brain, the part trained by Eleanor, locking into sync with hers. Okay, she turned to leave, then paused at the door. And Tessa? The earrings? They were tacky. Really, really tacky. She gave me a small, wounded smile and left, closing the door softly behind her. I sat back down, the cold fury hardening into a plan. The golden cage I'd built for him had become his whole world. And Sienna was right. We'd just wait for him to start rattling the bars. It wouldn't take long. Men like Liam, drunk on perceived power and their own reflection, always did. The waiting was a form of torture. Watching Liam parade around in his borrowed feathers, his contempt for Sienna settling into a quiet, constant hum in our lives. He'd moved from suggestions to blatant neglect. He missed the dinner she'd cooked to celebrate her promotion to full director. A crisis with a potential partner in Austin. You understand, the partner, I later learned from a gossipy tech blog, was a startup throwing a pool party that weekend. He forgot their anniversary. When Sienna mentioned it, mildly, he'd stared at her blankly from across our dinner table. Was that this month? Shit, I'll have my assistant send flowers. He no longer bothered to hide the scent of other women's perfume to something floral and expensive, clinging to his jacket collars. Sienna stopped mentioning it. She had retreated into a calm, impenetrable fortress. She was working with a lawyer named Miriam Chin, a shark in a sleek pantsuit who specialized in high net worth divorces and had a particular dislike for entitled tech brothers. Our strategy sessions were held in Miriam's downtown office, a world away from the life Liam was playing house in. We're building the case, Miriam would say, her fingers flying over a keyboard. Financial discovery is key. The commingling of what Tessa gave him with what might be considered marital assets is, creatively, chaotic. We're following the money from the expense account. It's leading to some very interesting restaurants and hotel minibar charges. Not many business partners listed. Sienna would nod, her jaw set. She was gathering evidence with the same meticulous care she applied to nonprofit audits. It was a cold, clinical process, and it was slowly scouring away the last of her grief, leaving only a clear-eyed determination. The detonation finally happened on a deceptively peaceful Sunday. I had cooked paella, a recipe I had been perfecting. Sienna was relaxed, telling a funny story about a grant application gone hilariously wrong. For a few hours, it felt like the old us, before the poison of Liam's success had seeped in. He arrived late, smelling of cigar smoke and someone else's champagne. He picked at his food, scrolling through his phone, a faint, self-satisfied smile on his face. When Sienna got up to clear the plates, he finally put the phone down. "Tessa," he said, his tone artificially casual. "Let's talk in the study. Business stuff." Sienna paused, a stack of plates in her hands. She met my eyes for a fraction of a second. "A flicker of this, is it?" Then continued into the kitchen without a word. I followed him into the book-lined room, closing the heavy door behind me. He went straight to my small bourbon collection, pouring himself 2 fingers without asking. He swirled the glass, his back to me. "So," he began, taking a sip, "I've been doing a lot of thinking. About the future. My future." I leaned against my desk, arms crossed. "Oh, this VP thing, it's a good gig. For now." He turned, facing me, adopting what he must have thought was a sincere, man-to-man expression. "But it's not mything. You know, I'm a builder, a founder. I need to be creating my own legacy." I said nothing, letting him dig. "And a big part of that," he continued, gaining steam, "is having the right partner. Someone who gets the vision, who can move in the same circles, who's an asset, not a liability." He took another gulp of bourbon, fortifying himself. "Sienna, she's a good woman, in her way, but let's be real. Tess, she's from a different time, a different place. She's holding me back, holding us back." The room seemed to grow very cold, very quiet. "Holding us back," I repeated, my voice flat. "You know what I mean. Look at you. You're Tessa Williams of Ether Ventures. You need a sister-in-law who can host dinners, charm El Peace, be part of the brand. Sienna would rather be reconciling a charity's bank statement. It's embarrassing." Every word was a precise, calculated dagger aimed at the woman who had saved me. The cold fury I'd felt in my office solidified into something harder, sharper. "What are you saying, Liam?" I asked, though I knew I needed to hear him say it. He puffed out his chest, the victim of his own brave decision. "I'm saying I'm filing for divorce. It's time, for both of us. I need to be free to pursue the life I'm meant to have, with someone who fits. Like Jenna. She's dynamic. She's connected. She's now." He finished the bourbon, setting the glass down with a definitive click. "I need you to be on my side in this. Tess, you're my sister, my blood. Once the paperwork is settled, we can really be a team. You, me, and the right kind of partner. The sky's the limit." He looked at me, expecting understanding, expecting camaraderie. The sheer, staggering depth of his selfishness took my breath away. I pushed off the desk, standing to my full height. My voice, when it came, was low and carried a vibration that made the fine hairs on his arms stand up. On your side, yeah, I mean, it's just the way of the world. People grow apart. Grow apart. I echoed. I took a step toward him. Let me get this straight. Sienna, who worked 2 jobs to feed and house your teenage sister because you couldn't be bothered. Sienna, who stood between me and every bully, every bill collector, every moment of pure despair. Sienna, whose only crime is that she aged while supporting you, and now has the audacity to have a career and a moral compass instead of getting Botox and pretending to care about blockchain. She's holding you back? He flinched, but held his ground, a petulance set to his mouth. She Chosito do that stuff. I never asked her to, and I'm grateful. Okay, but gratitude isn't a life sentence. I don't love her anymore. Am I supposed to be miserable forever because she did her duty? Her duty? The word was a hiss. You don't know the meaning of the word. Your duty was to be here. It was to be a brother, a son, a husband. You failed at all of them. The only thing you've ever been loyal to is your own reflection. His face flushed crimson. Watch it. Tessa, I'm still you're nothing to me. I cut him off, the words dropping like stones. You're a client I regret taking on, a bad investment, a moral vacancy in a tailored suit. I took another step, now squarely in his space. You want a divorce? Fine, you'll get one. You'll give Sienna every single cent she's entitled to under the law, and then some. I will make sure Miriam Chen eviscerates you in court so thoroughly they'll be able to see your lack of a spine from space. And when it's done, I paused, letting the silence swell, watching the first flicker of real fear enter his eyes. When it's done, I continued, my voice a deadly whisper. You will no longer be my brother. That title, like your marriage, will be terminated. Your VP position, your obscene salary, your expense account, your key card to this building. All of it, gone. The life you're pretending to live is built on my goodwill. Divorce Sienna, and you divorce yourself from everything attached to my name. You will be a ghost in this town, a punchline. You'll have to make it on your own vision and charm. We both know how that ends. His bravado shattered. Panic, raw and ugly, twisted his features. You can't do that. I'm family. Your only family. Sienna is my family. I stated, you're a genetic coincidence. I'm rectifying. Choose. Liam. Stay married to Sienna in name only. Keep your gilded cage. And we can maintain this pathetic fiction in public. Or leave her and be prepared to have nothing. Absolutely nothing. Not even me. He sputtered, his mind racing, trying to find a loophole, a threat. You're bluffing. You wouldn't dare. The scandal, it would hurt Ether. A cold smile touched my lips. I turned, picked up the secure line on my desk, and pressed a speed dial button. It was answered on the first ring. Eleanor, it's Tessa. Apologies for the hour. My eyes never left Liam's paling face. Yes. We need to initiate a full internal audit of all business development expenditures, discretionary funds, and corporate card usage under Liam Williams, effective from his hire date. Please loop in legal and forensics. Have PR prepare a holding statement regarding employee misconduct and our commitment to fiduciary integrity. Yes, immediately. I hung up. The color had drained completely from Liam's face. He looked like a man watching his own execution. Scandal? I said softly. You're right. A scandal about an executive misusing company funds for personal affairs. Hotels. Jewelry. Gifts for his mistress that would be juicy. But you know what the narrative will be? Ether Ventures acts decisively against fraudulent employee. I'll be the principled CEO, cleaning house. You'll be the greedy, cheating leech who tried to ride his sister's coattails. Which story do you think TechCrunch will run with? He stumbled back a step, hitting the bookshelf. You set me up. You've been planning this. I gave you a chance, I said, my voice finally rising, fueled by years of bottled-up fury and disappointment. I gave you a job you didn't deserve, a life you hadn't earned, out of some pathetic, lingering hope that you might someday act like a decent human being. All you had to do was be minimally respectful to the woman who carried your weight for a decade. You couldn't even manage that. You had to flaunt your cheap affairs and your cheaper ambitions. So no, Liam, I didn't set you up. You built your own gallows. I'm just handing you the rope. The study door opened quietly. Sienna stood there, her face serene, but her eyes were blazing. She had heard everything. Liam looked from my unforgiving face to hers, seeing no ally, no softness, only a united, impregnable front. The reality of his total, utter defeat crashed down on him. The money, the car, the apartment, the status, all of it, evaporating. The terror of being poor, anonymous, and exposed was finally greater than his lust for a shiny new life. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He looked like a fish gasping on a dock. Get out of my house, I said, each word a final nail. The audit starts tomorrow. Your lawyer can talk to Miriam Chin. Don't contact Sienna. Don't contact me. You're done. He fled. The front door slammed so hard the framed pictures in the hall rattled. The silence that followed was profound, ringing with the aftermath of the explosion. I was trembling, the adrenaline crashing. Sienna walked into the study. She didn't speak. She just crossed the room and wrapped her arms around me, holding me tightly as the fierce, protective rage began to ebb, leaving a hollow, sad exhaustion in its wake. I hugged her back, my face buried in her shoulder. I'm sorry, I murmured, the words muffled. I'm so sorry it took me this long. She pulled back, holding my face in her hands, her thumbs wiping away tears I hadn't even felt fall. No, she said, her voice thick but unwavering. You were perfect. He made his choice a long time ago. Tonight, you just made him face the consequences. She managed a small, fierce smile. You're nothing to me. That might be the most beautiful thing I've ever heard anyone say. We stood there in the wreckage of our old family, the two of us, holding each other up. The line was drawn, the war was declared, and for the first time, we were fighting it together, on the same side of the line, with no more prisoners to take, and no more loyalty to waste. The morning after the detonation dawned with a strange, crystalline clarity. The air in the house felt different, lighter, as if a toxic fog had been pumped out. Sienna was already in the kitchen, her movements precise and calm as she prepared coffee. There were no tears, no trembling hands. Her face, in the pale morning light, held a resolute serenity I hadn't seen in years. The battle mask was off. The war was already won in her mind. Now, it was just the mopping up. Miriam's team has already filed the preliminary papers, she said, handing me a mug. They'll be served to him at his office today. It cites irreconcilable differences and constructive abandonment. Clean, fast, and it puts him on the defensive from minute one. I studied her. Are you okay? She took a slow sip, her gaze steady. I grieved for my marriage a long time ago. Tessa, in 100 different ways. When I found the receipt, when he missed our anniversary, when he looked at me like I was a stain on his new sofa. Last night, that was just the funeral. And honestly, a faint, wry smile touched her lips. It was a relief to hear the dirt hit the casket. No more pretending. My phone buzzed. It was Eleanor. I put it on speaker. The audit is a shark tank, and your brother is a minnow with a bleeding nose. Eleanor's crisp voice filled the kitchen. Forensics traced his corporate card. 68% of the charges in the last quarter have no verifiable business purpose. Fancy dinners for one at Gary Danko. Luxury hotel stays in the city on weeknights. That $8,000 bauble from Shreve's. The dummy even expensed a weekend in Napa with a potential investor listed as Jenna A. We pulled the reservation. It was a couple's massage package. Idiot. She sounded almost bored by the incompetence. Legal is drafting termination for cause. We'll present it to the board at 10 a.m. It's a formality. Do you want to be there? I looked at Sienna. She gave a single, sharp shake of her head. No mercy. Handle it. Eleanor. I said, I have other priorities. Wise. The narrative is already set. Ether upholds highest ethical standards. The PR spin is that we're purging a bad actor, not that the CEO's brother is a grifting moron. It makes you look stronger. She paused. And your sister? Sienna leaned toward the phone. I'm well. Eleanor. Thank you. Good. Don't settle for less than half of whatever he thinks she has. Most of it's yours by moral right anyway. The call clicked off. The legal process was a brutal, clinical dissection. Liam, panicked and finally lawyering up with a slick-looking attorney named Reynolds, tried to fight. We met once, in Miriam Chen's stark conference room. Liam looked shrunken inside his expensive suit, his eyes darting between me, Sienna, and the mountain of evidence Miriam had neatly stacked on the table. Reynolds opened with bluster. My client has been a dedicated executive. These allegations are a character assassination, clearly motivated by a bitter spouse and a family dispute being dragged into the corporate sphere. We will be contesting both the divorce terms and the wrongful termination. Miriam didn't even blink. She slid a single sheet across the table. It was a summary, a timeline of expenses with highlighted entries. Dedicated to what? Precisely? The business development at the Meadowood Resort Spa? Or the strategic partnership discussed over $400 bottles of Dom Perignon at the Battery, paid for by the company, with no follow-up memo, email, or lead generated. Her voice was calm, forensic. As for the divorce, California is a community property state. The community in question was significantly funded by Ms. Williams's generosity. We have a forensic accountant's report tracing the flow of funds. We are prepared to argue for a substantial reimbursement to the community for my client's separate property, which, given the commingling, is essentially everything in your client's name. Alternatively, she said, lacing her fingers together, we can settle today. My client gets the Palo Alto condo free and clear, the agreed-upon spousal support figure, and a one-time cash settlement. You walk away, and the internal audit report stays sealed. Ether will simply terminate him for performance issues. No fraud indictment, no public evisceration. Liam's lawyer scanned the document, his confidence wilting. He leaned over and whispered frantically to Liam, who had gone a sickly gray. I could see the calculations crashing behind Liam's eyes, the public shame, the unhirability, the potential criminal exposure for fraud if Ether chose to press charges, his legacy versus his freedom. I need to confer with my client. Reynolds said stiffly. You have 15 minutes, Miriam said, checking her watch. We have a deposition with the Chronically at noon regarding the robust financial controls at Ether Ventures. The angle is already set. Would be a shame to have to pivot it. In the hall, Sienna let out a long, slow breath. He's going to fold. Of course he is. I said, he's a coward. He always has been. He'll take the least painful exit. She looked at me, a complex mix of sadness and triumph in her eyes. You knew that about him all along, didn't you? I hoped I was wrong. I admitted softly, until I couldn't hope anymore. 10 minutes later, they agreed to all of Sienna's terms. The termination at Ether was a quiet, bloodless affair. Eleanor handled it. Liam was summoned to a small, windowless conference room, a deliberate downgrade from the boardroom. Monica from HR and the head of security were present, according to the email summary I received. He tried to plead, to invoke my name one last time. You have to talk to Tessa. She's my sister. This is a misunderstanding. Eleanor's reported reply was succinct. Ms. Williams is no longer involved in this matter. Your employment is terminated, effective immediately, for gross misuse of company resources and violation of your fiduciary duty. You will surrender your key card, laptop, and phone to security now. Any further communication should go through our legal department. He was escorted from the building, his personal effects in a cardboard box. A junior associate later told me, with barely concealed glee, that Liam had stood on the sidewalk for a full 5 minutes, staring at the gleaming Ether logo, as if waiting for a rewrite. The small, vengeful part of me wished I'd been there to see it. The larger, wearier part was just glad it was over. The rumor mill, of course, churned. Whispers of nepotism blow up and family feud swirled through Silicon Valley gossip channels. Liam, in a final, pathetic gambit, tried to plant a story with a sleazy tech blog, the headline draft, which a friendly journalist sent to Eleanor as a courtesy, screamed, family bloodbath. Ice Queen CEO freezes out brother for standing up to her. Eleanor's PR team was ready. They didn't deny it. They co-opted it an hour before the blog could publish. A respected mainstream business journal dropped an exclusive feature. Ether's Tessa Williams, betting on grit over pedigree. The article focused on my investment thesis, my rise, and yes, briefly, my inspiring, supportive relationship with her sister, Sienna, a financial director for nonprofits. It painted a picture of two self-made women. A single, oblique line addressed Liam. Williams recently parted ways with a business development executive following an internal review, underscoring her commitment to a culture of absolute accountability, regardless of personal relationships. The takeaway was clear. Principled leader cleans house. The sleazy blog story, when it finally dribbled out, was laughed off as sour grapes. Liam's social annihilation was complete, stripped of his title, his income, and the protective shell of my reputation. He was a ghost. He sold the Porsche. The luxury apartment lease wasn't renewed. I heard through the grapevine he tried to pitch a new can't-miss idea to a few second-tier VCs. The response was apparently a uniform. Pitying no. The word was out. The last time I saw him, it was an accident. I was driving through the less glossy part of San Francisco, near the ballpark, and I saw him stumbling out of a dive bar in the middle of the afternoon. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair unkempt. He was arguing loudly with someone on the phone. No, you listen. I'm a founder. I built. I had a company. My sister is Tessa Williams. You know, Ether Venerable, hello? Hello. He stared at the dead phone, his shoulders slumping, before hurling it into a nearby dumpster with a choked cry of rage. I drove on, feeling nothing but a vast, empty distance. A month after the settlement was final, I booked 2 first-class tickets to Maui. We're going. I told Sienna, no laptops, no phones, just sun, salt water, and sleep. She didn't argue. For 2 weeks, we did nothing. We slept 10 hours a night. We read trashy novels by the pool. We learned to surf, laughing hysterically as we wiped out over and over. The tropical sun baked the last of the lingering chill from our bones. One evening, watching the sun melt into the Pacific, sipping pineapple juice, Sienna said quietly, I don't think I've breathed this deeply since I was 20. When we returned, tanned and rested, Sienna gave me a business plan, not for a nonprofit, for a consulting firm, Williams Associates, financial strategy for purpose-driven organizations. She'd used part of the settlement as seed capital. I'm not going to work for you. Tessa, she said, her eyes sparkling with a familiar, fierce light I hadn't seen since she faced down Brittany Chase. I'm going to work with you, as an equal, in my own lane. She was spectacular. Within 6 months, she had a roster of clients, from environmental groups to community theaters, helping them build sustainable financial models. She hired 2 part-time accountants. She was Finally, a CEO, her own. The new rhythm of our lives was sweet and simple. One lazy Saturday morning, months later, we were in the sun-drenched breakfast nook of the Palo Alto house. Sienna was reading the business section, a real smile playing on her lips. I was scrolling through deal memos on my tablet, the silence between us comfortable and complete. She looked up, catching my eye. "You know what the strangest part is?" she said. I don't hate him. I just don't think about him. It's like a bad tooth that finally got pulled. The absence of pain is such a profound relief. You forget how much it used to ache." I nodded. I felt the same. Liam was a closed file, a resolved liability. The energy we'd spent managing him, worrying about him, was now free. Sienna folded the newspaper and reached for the orange juice. "There's a profile of Ether in here. They call you the gut check genius." I snorted. They need better copywriters. She poured the juice, her movements sure and graceful. "My sister is Tessa Williams," she said, not as a brag, but as a simple, wondrous fact, tasting the truth of it on her tongue. I looked at her, at the woman who had been my wall, my engine, my lighthouse, and my sister. I said, clinking my coffee mug against her juice glass, "is Sienna Williams, CEO, strategist, and absolute badass in her own right." We smiled at each other, the California sun streaming through the window, warming the wood of the table we owned, in the house that was truly, completely ours. The storm was over. The silence that remained wasn't the silence of absence that had followed our parents' death. It was the deep, rich, fertile silence of peace. And for the first time in as long as I could remember, it was a silence we had chosen, built with our own hands, and filled with nothing but the promise of a future we would design. Together, success, I learned, wasn't a fortress. It was a spotlight, and spotlights attract all kinds of insects. Ether Ventures was now a powerhouse, my name synonymous with a certain kind of ruthless, clear-eyed genius that the tech press loved to dissect. Sienna's consulting firm, Williams Strategic, was thriving, her reputation for integrity and pragmatic brilliance making her the secret weapon of half the worthwhile nonprofits in the Bay Area. We had built our lighthouses. We just hadn't anticipated how far the light would reach, or what old ghosts it might illuminate. The proposal landed on my desk with a dull thud, a standard inbound deck from Chase Retail Group, a mid-tier, family-owned chain of home goods stores based in Ohio, desperately seeking a digital transformation lifeline and Series C funding. The cover page featured the bland, smiling faces of the board. My eyes snagged on one name, and a cold trickle, like melted ice from a long-forgotten drink, traced down my spine. Brittany Chase, Vice President of Digital Strategy. I hadn't thought of her in years. The pink spray paint, the sneer in the hallway, Sienna's voice slicing through the crowd. Code cement the memory was a fossil, but suddenly it felt freshly unearthed. The meeting was a farce of forced cheer. Brittany walked into the Ether conference room as if she owned it, trailing two fawning male subordinates. Time had polished her. The teenage malice had been refined into a glossy, corporate-branded aggression. Her blonde hair was a perfect sheet. Her suit screamed expensive austerity, and her smile didn't touch her eyes. "Tessa Williams," she said, extending a manicured hand. Her grip was firm, competitive. "My God, look at you, valedictorian to venture titan. I always knew you were driven." "Brittany," I replied, my tone professionally neutral. "Welcome to Ether. Your deck outlines a significant challenge." I gestured for them to sit, my team of analysts flanking me. The pitch was what I expected. Buzzword bingo wrapped around a crumbling core business. Omni-channel integration, AI-driven personalization, blockchain for supply chain transparency. It was a Hail Mary pass from a company that had slept through the digital revolution. I let my team ask the technical questions, watching Brittany, She deflected with practiced vagueness, her answers circling back to her family's legacy and trusted Midwestern values. When pressed on their dismal customer retention metrics, a flicker of the old, petulant impatience crossed her face. Finally, she turned her full focus on me, leaning forward. But Tessa, you of all people understand the value of an underdog story, a company with deep roots, ready for its second act. It's not just about the numbers, is it? It's about vision and loyalty. Her gaze was pointed. I was so sorry to hear about your family troubles. In the papers, it must have been difficult, but it seems you landed on your feet. You always were resilient. The barb, camouflaged as sympathy, was expertly thrown. I know your past. I know your messy brother. That MY team shifted uncomfortably. I simply steepled my fingers. At Ether, we find vision is best evaluated through a lens of clear metrics and viable pathways to profitability. Sentiment is a poor investment strategy. Let's discuss your customer acquisition cost in relation to lifetime value. The numbers, as presented, suggest a fundamental mismatch. The rest of the hour was a slow, painful dissection. The decision was inevitable. The investment committee voted unanimously to pass. I called Brittany myself to deliver the verdict. My voice cool and professional. She took it in silence. Then her tone turned sugary and sharp. I see. Well, we're disappointed, but not surprised. The valley can be so insular, so focused on the next new thing. It forgets about the enduring things, like legacy, like where you come from. She paused. Let's have a proper drink. For old time's sake. Clear the air. The Rosewood. Tonight at 8? It was a trap. I knew it, but a part of me, the part that had once cowered by a locker, wanted to look that trap in the eye. All right. The Rosewood bar was all dark wood and whispered deals. Brittany was already there, nursing a martini. She'd dismissed her lackeys. This was personal. So, the queen in her castle. She began, not offering a drink. It's quite a story. Orphaned, nobody becomes Silicon Valley royalty. The press eats it up. The sister as savior narrative is particularly touching. Very relatable. I ordered a sparkling water. Get to the point. Brittany, I have other meetings. Her smile hardened. The point is, you're a hypocrite. You preach about metrics and merit. But your biggest investment was a sentimental one. Your sister. She spat the word. You built a whole persona on clawing your way up from nothing. But when it came time to play fair with a company that represents real, generational effort, you shut us down. Because of high school? How pathetically small. So that was her read. A grudge. The decision was based on your company's non-existent digital strategy and hemorrhaging finances. It was the easiest no of my quarter. Spare me. She leaned in, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. I know your type. You get a little power, and you rewrite history. You were a pathetic charity case then, and you're a vindictive bitch now. And that arrangement you have with your sister? She let the word hang, heavy with insinuation. People talk. Tessa, it's unusual. Some might say unhealthy. A woman who cleaves to her brother's wife after destroying him? It raises questions about judgment, about stability. The air left my lungs. She wasn't just attacking the deal. She was weaponizing the one pure thing in my life, twisting it into something sordid. The old cement feeling threatened to rise, to freeze me in place. Then I saw Sienna's face in my mind, standing in that hallway. Don't give them your tears. I took a slow sip of water, letting the cold clarity wash through me. Are you finished? My voice was eerily calm. Your proposal was rejected because it was bad business. Your attempt to reframe that as a personal slight is a testament to your own stunted development. As for my family, I said, leaning forward to match her posture, my eyes locking onto hers. My relationship with my sister is the strongest, most successful partnership I've ever been a part of. It's built on a foundation you couldn't begin to comprehend. Sacrifice, loyalty, and unconditional respect. You wouldn't recognize it if it bit you. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a real business to run. I stood, throwing cash on the table for my water. And Brittany, the pathetic charity case is worth about 200 of your family's companies. Try to have a good night. I walked out, my heart hammering, not from fear, but from a white-hot, purifying anger. She wouldn't stop. I knew it. 2 days later, the story broke, not in a major outlet, but in a snide, gossipy tech tabloid known for hit jobs. Ether's Heart. Is VC Darling's sister act a smokescreen for vindictive streak? It rehashed Liam's firing with a sinister slant, painting me as a cutthroat who turned on my own blood. Then it pivoted, quoting sources close to a recent failed funding round, hinting at unusually close personal entanglements and a partnership that raises eyebrows in traditional investment circles. It was all innuendo. No facts, but it was designed to stain. My phone lit up with concerned texts from colleagues. Eleanor's name flashed on my screen. Before I could answer, my home office door swung open. Sienna stood there, her tablet in hand, her face pale, but her eyes burning with a fierce, protective light. She'd seen it. She's a cockroach, Sienna stated, her voice trembling with rage. She always was. I know. Eleanor's PR team is on it. They'll issue a denial. Focus on Ether's performance. No. Sienna cut me off. She walked in and sat opposite me. Denials are defensive. They make you sound guilty. We're not playing defense. We're not hiding. She took a deep, steadying breath. You gave that interview a few months ago, for the Journal, about betting on grit. You talked about me, vaguely. It's time to be specific. I stared at her. Sienna, we can't. That's our private life. It's our strength. She fired back. And she's trying to make it look like a weakness, a secret. So we shine the biggest, brightest light we have on it. We tell the real story, not the gossip version. Our version. Eleanor, on speakerphone. Agreed. It's bold. It's high risk. If you do it, you have to be perfect, unassailable, and united. We looked at each other, a silent conversation passing between us. The hallway, the parking lot, the broken plate, the thumbtack on the wall, the unspoken codes. We were always united. Set it up, I said. The interview was with the same respected outlet that had run the first profile. The journalist, a sharp woman named Anya, came to our home. We sat side by side on the sofa, a united front. Anya didn't pull punches. The recent article implies your personal relationship is unconventional and that it may cloud your professional judgment. How do you respond? I felt Sienna's knee press lightly against mine. A point of contact. Code cement. I'm here. I respond by saying that my judgment has been honed by the most rigorous personal crucible imaginable. I began, my voice clear. When I was 16 and utterly alone, my brother left. Sienna stayed. She didn't have to. She chose to. She worked 2 jobs to feed me and keep a roof over our heads. She stood between me and a world that, at times, was very cruel. She is the reason I finished school, the reason I believed I could have a future. That's not an unconventional relationship. That's called family, the kind you choose. Sienna picked up, her voice softer but no less firm. What Tessa built, she built with that same ethic of loyalty and clear-eyed perseverance. When she succeeded, her first instinct wasn't to buy a sports car. It was to try and lift me up, to give me the freedom to build my own dream. That's not a smokescreen. That's the definition of integrity. It's what our parents taught us before they were gone. You look after your people. I took over. As for my professional judgment, Ether's returns speak for themselves. We invest in grit, in solutions, in teams that have the kind of unwavering loyalty to their mission that I was fortunate enough to experience firsthand. The idea that this is a liability is not only offensive, it's demonstrably false. My partnership with Sienna is my competitive advantage. It's the lens through which I can spot real resilience. And I'd stack that lens against a spreadsheet of traditional assumptions any day of the week. We talked for an hour. We didn't mention Brittany or Liam by name. We didn't have to. The story we told out of loss, choice, sacrifice, and mutual triumph that was a tidal wave that washed away the grubby insinuations. The article ran with the headline, "The Sisterhood Advantage: How Tessa and Sienna Williams Redefine Family and Fortune." The response was a landslide. Women, especially, wrote in, sharing stories of chosen family, of sisterhoods that saved them. Business leaders praised the refreshing ethos. The gossip piece was forgotten, an ugly stain buried under an avalanche of something genuine and powerful. Brittany Chase's company, meanwhile, was the subject of a less flattering follow-up piece a week later, detailing their mounting debts and failed digital transformation. The sources for the original hit job were widely assumed to be her. Her reputation in the business world, never strong, was now in tatters. A week after the article, I sat with my lawyer, David, and Eleanor. Sienna was there too. The sisterhood clause is drafted. David said, sliding copies across the table. In the event of your incapacity or death, Sienna assumes a special advisory role with veto power over any dissolution of Ether for 5 years, and controls a specific block of voting shares. She also becomes the executor of the majority of your personal estate, with mandates to fund the scholarship in your mother's name in perpetuity. Eleanor scanned it. It's unorthodox. Most would leave this to a spouse, or a blood relative. Sienna is my relative, I said, my hand finding hers on the table. More than that, she's my successor in spirit. This clause doesn't protect money. It protects a promise. The promise that the ladder we built doesn't get pulled up, that the light stays on. Sienna squeezed my hand. It's not about control, Eleanor. It's about continuity, of the values that built it all. That Christmas, the house glowed with warmth and laughter. The tree was covered in ornaments we'd collected over the years, silly and sentimental. The newest was a glittering glass ball with a photo inside. Me, Sienna, and the goofy-faced rescue we'd adopted, named, appropriately, Chip, as in a chip on one shoulder, now happily carried. The doorbell chimed, and the house filled with our chosen family. Eleanor, a few close colleagues from Ether and Sienna's firm, friends who had stood by us. The air was thick with the smell of mulled wine, pine, and joy. I stood by the fireplace, watching Sienna laugh at something Eleanor said, her face radiant. Chip wagged his way between guests, blissfully unaware of the battles fought. The ghost of a lonely 16-year-old girl, clutching a silver necklace in a silent church, seemed like a character from someone else's story. Sienna caught my eye and walked over, handing me a glass of wine. A pretty good view from the lighthouse, isn't it? She said softly, following my gaze around the room. I clinked my glass against hers. The best. We built it well. We built it together. She corrected, smiling. Always. Epilogue. 5 years later, the ballroom of the Stanford Auditorium was packed. The first cohort of the Eleanor Sienna Williams Fellowship for Women in STEM from under-resourced backgrounds was graduating. I stood at the podium, the lights warm, looking out at the young, hopeful, fierce faces. People often ask me the secret to success in a turbulent world. I began, my voice echoing slightly. They want to know about market trends, or negotiating tactics, or the right time to pivot. I paused, finding Sienna in the front row. She sat straight, her eyes bright, a proud, steady presence. My North Star. I'll tell you, the only secret that ever mattered. I said, my gaze sweeping back to the students. When I was not much older than you, my world fell apart. And in that silence, one person spoke. She said, don't give them your tears. She said, you get the hell out of this town. She stood in front of me when no one else would. She was my sister, Sienna, not by blood, but by choice, by unwavering, gritty, magnificent choice. I could see them leaning forward, listening. That choice to show up, to stay, to invest in someone else's humanity without a guaranteed return. That is the most powerful force I have ever encountered. It's more powerful than any algorithm, any amount of capital, any headline. So my advice to you is this: be brilliant, be relentless, change the world with your minds. But also, look around, see who is standing in the cement beside you. See who deserves a place in your rose garden, and choose them. Build your own sisterhood, your own brotherhood, your own unshakable clan, because in the end, the legacy that matters won't be the deals you closed or the code you wrote. It will be the people you lifted up, the hands you held, and the light you refused to let go out. For each other, the applause was thunderous. As I stepped down, Sienna was there. She didn't say a word. She just pulled me into a tight, fierce hug, the kind that held a lifetime of coded messages, of cracked cement and defiant roses, of silent kitchens and loud victories. Over her shoulder, I saw the students, talking animatedly, some wiping their eyes, others gesturing with passion. The next generation of builders. We walked out of the bright lights, side by side, into the warm California night. The past was a quiet, closed book. The future was ours to write, together, and for the first time since that long-ago funeral. The silence wasn't something to be endured. It was simply the peaceful, spacious, and utterly unbreakable sound of home.